Ladies and gents, it's your boy Rocco, and I'm gonna be yapping cinema. More specific, I'm gonna be yapping about the anticipated Stranger Things season 5, episode 8 finale. The ending of an era, the ending of a show that's been going on since I believe 2016, around there, or 2015. Now, this is gonna be a little breakdown video and my thoughts about it, and then I will be talking about the obviously the biggest theory and biggest point that everybody's talking about in terms of the last episode more specifically, and I will be giving my rating on it. Now, before we get started, Happy New Year's. This is coming out the first, very next day after the show. This is the 1st of January. Hope you guys had a good New Year's. Hopefully nothing happened. Hopefully you guys got to enjoy this show and enjoy your family. So, that being said, let's get started. There is a lot to talk about. So the season finale, episode 8, it starts off with the Hawkins gang. Is what I kind of have them as. Set off going to Dimension X. I don't know if you guys remember at the end of episode 7. That was the whole plan. They're gonna wait to Dimension X gets close enough to where they can climb it through the radio tower, and they're gonna go fight Vecna. And that's what they kind of did. They went up. They had a little trouble at first, but they went up, and they're walking the desert in Dimension X, heading towards Vecna in his base where he has all the kids. Now, in this episode, before they start fighting, like right in the moment where they start like fighting with Vecna, it is revealed that the reason the whole cave thing and the whole scene of him as a kid with that one guy that he murdered was the reason he was petrified was because the mind flayer was not wanting Henry to remember that memory. He wanted him to forget that memory because it's revealed that Henry, when he was a Boy Scout kid and he used to live there, that he heard screaming in the caves and he went to go see what it was. It was this guy in a briefcase. The guy in the briefcase was obviously very startled. He said that he was saying that Henry was sent by somebody to kill him, yada yada. He shoots Henry. Henry, in defense, charges at him, throws the gun out of his hand, and then proceeds to bash his fucking face in with the rock. Now, he decides to open the briefcase, and there's like a stone that looks like a piece of the Upside Down, in a way, because it's like a dark black stone, but it has red cracks in it. And when he's holding it in his hand, the rock begins to become like, it starts to turn into dust in a way, and it starts coming into through the hole in his hand because he got shot right in his hand, and it starts entering his theme, and he starts like, he's looking like he's having a hard time, it's a painful time. And the guy who, he's bashed his face in, he wasn't dead, but he was dying, but he goes, resist it, it will try to corrupt you. So it was basically implying that this whole time Henry was just possessed in a way by the mind flayer, and the mind flayer gave him the abilities to have telekinetic powers. Everything that he does in the show with his mind and all of that, the mind flayer gave that to him in order, as Dustin said in the 4th season, to become like his 5-star general, like his main guy in leading the army and leading the cause to merge the two worlds. And that Will was able to see this in Vecna's mind, and he was trying to convince Henry, like, oh, you were just an innocent kid, you didn't know what you were doing, it was never you. And for a second there, it makes it seem like Henry did, in fact, never wanted any of this, and he's just been possessed the whole time. But it turns out he then tells Will, get out of my head. You don't know what you're talking about. I chose this. He showed me what he wanted to do, why he thinks, like, he's saying that the Mind Flayer showed them his plan and told them the reason why behind the plan. And Henry said, I made the decision to continue working with the Mind Flayer because I believe in the same thing that he does. And I think the plan needs to be executed of merging the two worlds, and him and the Mind Flayer will reshape the new world to their ideal, whatever they believe. So that was a good kind of like almost twist thing that they were gonna have, that they were giving us. Um, and then, you know, Vecna then proceeds to kick Will out, and he starts fighting L. Now, the base where Vecna was with the kids, it looked like a weird spider kind of thing, and it was actually true because when the crew, Nancy's gang, as you can see in this photo, it consists of Jonathan, Steve, Mike, Dustin, Will, Robin, and Joyce, led by Nancy, are the crew that's sent to Dimension X to go fight Vecna more directly. While El and Kali were supposed to fight him mentally, but that goes wrong. He decides, I'm not fighting them mentally. He proceeds to wake up to his physical body, which is in Dimension X, and is like, I'm gonna deal with the crew that was sent here to kill me. And he awakens the base, and the base becomes this giant kaiju like body for the Mind Flayer. Think Stranger Things 3, where the Mind Flayer was um, making a actual physical body using like rats and people, that gooey monster thing. That was the Mind Flayer creating a physical entity for himself so he could roam our Earth and try to kill the gang, especially L. Same thing, but at a big Godzilla like, situation. It was a big Godzilla like body for the Mind Flayer. And that just caught the whole crew off guard. They didn't know what to do. They were running for it. They decided, hey, we're going to do the same thing that we did to that body in Stranger Things Season 3, where from above they were throwing fireworks at it, weakening it enough to where El could do something to it. So they decided to do the same thing. They're like, let's lead it into these mountains where there's like a little entrance to these mountains, but it's, we could be on top looking down and we'll fuck it up from the top. We'll throw all our firepower at it. And then L, after, soldiers in the Upside Down, they know what Hopper and his crew is doing, which is consisting of Hopper, uh, 11, Kali, and I'm drawing a blank to him. Uh, Fuck, he's Bald Eagle. Until I remember his name, he's Bald Eagle for now in the rest of this video. But it consists of them four. Bald Eagle is setting up the bomb that they have. Like, they're gonna play a song, and once the song ends, it's gonna trigger the bomb. Hopper is in charge of taking care of El and Kali while they're mentally fighting. But like I said, they're not mentally fighting anymore because of Vecna deciding, hey, I'm gonna wake up. And um he decides to fuck with my boy Hops. He's saying like, oh, he showed them a vision of his dead daughter, saying his dead daughter going like, you did this to me, you murdered me, this is all your fault, and you're gonna lose another kid because that's just the way you are. And then when Hopper shot at Vecna, it was an illusion. He just wanted Hop to shoot at the water tank where 11 was at, and Hopper destroyed the gas tank because he was showing him an illusion of that Hopper killed an accident 11. So he was like, no, I gotta get her out of there. I gotta get her out of there. He gets her out, and it's revealed like he didn't shoot her. It was just an illusion. Um, Vecna just wanted Hopper to destroy the water tank so that way Elle couldn't comfortably have everything she needs in order to mentally attack him. Soldiers, on the other hand, are looking at this. They know Hopper's group is in the Hawkins lab in the Upside Down, so that leads into them pushing forward, attacking. Hop tries to escape. He takes 11 away. They're hiding, and 11 goes Whereas Kali, Hopper, despite not liking Kali and what she was doing to Elle, he decides to go back. He's murking all these soldiers in order to get her, but they do manage to capture him. They have him and Kali in a room, a bunch of like soldiers, like a handful of soldiers, um, and they go, "Where's 8? You know, if you don't tell me, I'm gonna shoot this little girl." Kali looks at Hopper in the sense of like, "Yo, I'm ready to die. Don't tell him anything." And there's like there's like this big helicopter that's putting the sonic waves so that Kali and Elle cannot use their powers, as it was shown earlier in Volume 1 and 2 of Season 5. Bald Eagle destroys it, you know, Green FN just fucking throws a bomb at it, blows it up, causing them to not have problems anymore with the power. And in the process of the explosion, everybody in the room got knocked over, but the guy that was pointing the gun at Kali shot. It just missed, and instead of shooting her in the fucking head, it shoots her in the torso. And 8 comes out and she just cleans house. She just fucking kills everybody. So that causes Kali to die. And that causes 8 to be like, you know what? I'm gonna go physically with Nancy's crew in Dimension X, and I'm gonna deal with Henry myself. She runs at the kaiju and she levitates herself in the air. Using her powers, she rips open a hole in the chest of the kaiju and flies in it in order to have a one-on-one with Vecna, which, in my opinion, was a very good scene, a very good fight sequence. Because I've always thought it's hard to have a fight sequence between two people who have the same powers, in the sense of their powers are, I can move things and you with my mind from afar. You know, it's kind of hard to make a fight sequence where it's two people just levitating and throwing each other around or throwing stuff at each other. You know, it's hard to make it interesting, in my opinion. I've seen many times where they have battles like that where it's like, I can levitate stuff and I can levitate you. I could do stuff to you with just my mind. And both of those people have the same powers and they're fighting one another. But it was a very good intense sequence between the both of them, where they both realize like, we're much stronger than the last time we fought. Henry says it to 11 like, "Oh, you got stronger, but I also," and he shows her, and it was a very good sequence. Then they, you know, it's a very fast sequence. The final fight, it's very fast. They, in order to help Elle, like I said, they're giving all their firepower from above, raining hell on this kaiju being, because since they have a hive mind, whatever is hurting the kaiju like being is also hurting Henry, and whatever is hurting Henry is hurting the kaiju like being. So, you know, you have Dustin and Steve underneath the thing stabbing it, you know, stabbing the fuck out of it. You got Nancy in the ground too, shooting the fuck out of it with her M16, and she's just blasting all her mags on it. Then you have Jonathan on top with the flamethrower. You have Lucas, who's has a wrist rocket and he's shooting like jugs full of gasoline. Where Mike with the flare gun is shooting them, so it causes a fire. Uh, Will is mentally trying to like stall or mentally fuck with Vecna, and then Joyce is just taking care of Will. And Robin is kind of helping out Jonathan. She's throwing her Molotovs. So everybody's kind of trying to help out 11 with her fight by weakening Vecna by hurting the Mind Flayer's body. And they succeed. And uh, 11 stabs Vecna on one of those teeth, pointy teeth looking things that were inside the base where he had the kids. They rescue the kids, and then he's kind of dying. He's still alive. And then, in my opinion, rightfully so, Joyce, reminiscing of all the things that happened to her because of this motherfucker and everything that happened in Stranger Things, you know, with her, with Will, especially with her son Jonathan going through problems like that. Uh, her love interest being Bob having to die, and just not being able to live a normal life. because of him, because of the mind flayer, she is hacking at his neck with her axe, trying to cut his head off. And while that's going, like I said, there's a sequence where she's remembering all the bad and traumatic stuff that have happened throughout the seasons because of that November 6th night where Will got kidnapped. And then everybody else is also experiencing those moments too, where they're remembering about everything that traumatic and harm and like hurtful and sad that they've gone through throughout the entirety of this journey while they're watching, Vecna die. Like, oh, it's finally over. All that suffering, Nancy's remembering Barb and stuff like that. And Vecna gets his head chopped off by Mrs. Byers. So, uh, but they successfully retrieve all the kids. They go into the Upside Down. They load the kids up in the van, in this big ass truck. Everybody's together. The whole gang's together. They're playing the song. The music is playing, and they're going back to the opening gate, the one that's in the middle of the town. They're going back. Everything's cool, but then they're intercepted by the army. The military is there waiting for them. They have it trapped. They pop their tires on exit. They have already like three sonic cannons pointing at the direction of the truck, just in case Elle is in there to subdue her. They open it. They have guns pointed everywhere. They're done. They got caught. But while having all of them pinned and guns pointed and they're searching them, they notice Elle is not with them. And they're like, where the fuck is 11 at? And they look back at the gate. Mike specifically looks at the gate that leads to the Upside Down, and 11 is standing there in the Upside Down in the gate looking at them. And basically, Hopper and Mike instantly know what she's doing. And especially Mike starts running forward and he's like, no, please don't do this, please don't do this. And mentally, 11 goes into Mike's head and explains to him that, she loves him, that Mike was always there for her since the very beginning, that he saw her for what she was, truly. Nobody knows her better than him, that he loved her and she knows that, and she's so happy that she got to experience something like that. And not only with Mike, but like to experience a loving friend group and set of people that cared for her, that were always there for her, and that it was all thanks to Mike. Because if you remember, Mike was the one to take her in. Lucas didn't want to. Dustin was kind of scared, and it was Mike who was making the call to be like, no, she's coming home with me, and we're gonna figure out what to do with her. So it all started because of Mike, like her whole experiencing a loving family, a loving friend group, a loving support system, and experiencing somebody who loves you romantically the way Mike does was because of Mike. So she's just thanking him, and she's saying that there's no better person to help the other people understand why I chose this than you. Even if you don't understand really why I'm doing this, or you don't like what I'm doing, there's no one better to help the other people and explaining to them understanding and them dealing, like helping out with my decision than you. So this is why, like, instead of going to Hop's mental like mind and doing this with him, she's doing it with Mike. And they kiss, they give one last good kiss to each other, and then the song stops playing. It blows up. It causes the particles, the sphere that was above Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down, to go fucking cool, crazy bananas. Blows up, destroys the whole Upside Down and Dimension X alongside with Elle. And since it destroyed the whole thing, by the time they look back, there's not even a portal. It's just once again the library destroyed. It's just a destroyed library building instead of this big ass gate that leads into the Upside Down. And that's that. And then we have the ending, the actual ending of the episode, where it jumps 18 months into the future, where the OG gang and Max are graduating high school and getting ready to, become adults and start thinking about their future and going their separate ways in life. But starting more with the more adult like guys and what they were doing, um, As you can see in the photo, we have Jonathan, Robin, Nancy, and Steve. They become really good friends because they're all similar ages. They become really good friends, and they're all experiencing the same thing of being like young adults, like being more into the life of trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life, what you want the rest of your life to look like. And they're kind of reminiscing, and then in this scene they're exploring what they've kind of been doing. So Jonathan is in New York and he's studying to become a filmmaker. He's become more into filmmaking, and he's really into this like capital anti-capitalist movie. It's kind of a joke in the scene that he's making this capitalist scene. Nancy was studying in Chicago, but then she dropped out and got like an interim level at this like big journalist news thing in Chicago, which is something she's always wanted to pursue. Jonathan, Steve, our boy Steve the Hare Harrington, he still doesn't have his little nuggets, but he's still kind of familiar with kids as he becomes the coach for a little league of kids that play baseball, and one of them was Dustin. Not Dustin. Our boy, Delightful Derek. And I thought that was very cool because there's a scene where Delightful Derek just straight up, once they get rescued and they're driving in the upside down, going home to go through the portal to go home. Derek hugs Steve, and Steve kind of just like feels nice to him that this kid views him that way and hugged him, and is like grateful for him. So it was cool to see that like Derek is hanging out more with Steve because Steve is now his baseball coach, and he's also a sex ed kid for kids. He's a sex ed teacher, so that's what he's kind of doing. And he also talks about how he's still in love with Hawkins. How he doesn't want anybody to move out of Hawkins, like because like I said, Nancy's not there, Jonathan's not there, and he's just saying overall like oh, once you guys become what you guys want to become, like you guys should come back to Hawkins and live here and while still doing what you guys do, because there's no place like Hawkins. And he's just in love with Hawkins and he wants to buy a house there. And they didn't really explain what the fuck Robin's doing. She's still the radio host, but I don't know if that was because she mentioned that like the person who was in charge of the tower let them come back for one more. So I don't know if Robin's no longer gonna be a radio host or if she is, but they didn't really like. And then also like Vicky isn't there, and there's no talks about Vicky at all. So who knows what she's doing? I don't know if she's still a nurse. I don't know if even her and Robin are together, but whatever. But also, a beautiful thing is that they were talking about how they should still stay in contact, because you gotta remember this is the '80s going into the '90s. There still isn't a lot of access in terms of like how we have now, in terms of social media, phones, texting, FaceTiming. Uh, you know, it's just less accessible to see each other unless you're doing it in person. So they're like, hey, what's a place that's closest to all of us? Like, we don't necessarily have to meet in Hawkins. We can meet in a middle point between Chicago, New York, and Hawkins. And they choose Philadelphia. They go, Philadelphia's a great city. Robin goes, I have this weird uncle who lives up there and he has a big ass mansion, like type house. We could just meet there all the time. We could just meet there once a month, catch up, reminisce, and just hang out before we gotta go back to our lives. Which I thought was a beautiful scene. This scene was very touching and very nice because like it's a real thing that you have. Those people that you've known long time in high school and stuff, when life starts coming around and everybody is like in that position where we're not kids, we're not depending on our parents and our families. Like we're in that age where we start having to look and explore the world for our purpose and for what we're going to be doing with our future. And that forces you kind of in a way without wanting to kind of like separate and deviate from those people. Because like I said, everybody's just on the look to find what their purpose is or what they want to do for the rest of their lives. And they're adults now. Everybody's adults now, and now you're forced to like think about stuff like taxes, like mortgages, like car insurance, like bills in general. And that kind of does have you little by little fade from those friend groups. And sometimes that fading away leads you into other friend groups that it's much more easier to hang out with and see because of the lifestyle you're now having than your previous ones. So it's harder for them to kind of stay together. But they do realize, like, hey, we have other friend groups, but it's just not the same because of the things that they went through and the amount of time they've known each other. But more specifically, the the trauma that they have together and the experiences they have that no one else can even come close to having. So they're like, it's not the same, and I still want to be with, like, hang out with you guys and like see you guys and like just be together as friends. So they decide, hey, you know what? Let's go to Philly once a month. We'll hang out there. We'll see each other. Mandatory. It's like a tradition that they're starting up of being like, hey, we're still gonna see each other. We're still gonna stay in touch. Philadelphia. So that was a touching place as somebody who is in that age where I'm still I'm still young. I'm still very young, but I'm in that transitioning of finding out what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life and like worrying about adult stuff and having those moments with friend groups where it's like you had such beautiful times, but now you're kind of fading away from each other. But that's just because life is getting in the way, you know. So that was a very good scene. But then it turns into the OG crew and Max and how they're in Mike's basement and they're having what could possibly be their very last D&D campaign session ever, or at the very least for a long time, since like I said, they're now entering that stage where they're going to college, they're going to universities, they're gonna, and some of them, like Will and Dustin, they have them in separate places from Hawkins. They're far from Hawkins, and Dustin is close still, but he's like a day and a half away on car. And Will's like in a completely other fucking state and city. But, it's just sad. It's like a sad thing about, you know, how this could be the last time they hang out like that. And then it also transitions into Joyce and Hopper. Finally, we get to see them in Enzo's. Hopper is like excited to tell her about this news because he's saying like it's a good day to celebrate. He's ordering fancy stuff because she's like, not only is the graduation of Will, but also because I have interesting news to tell you. And the news is that he said that he was talking to his homies from back in the day when he was in New York and he was a cop in New York, that there's a small town not that far away from the city of New York, still in New York, but it's a small town where they need a new police chief, and that somebody the resume and record of Chief Hopper will fit right in, and that it's gonna pay better than it does in Hawkins, and like he said, we're gonna be a little trip, a little drive away, not even a trip, a little drive away from the city. Like they could go in and out the city whenever they want, and that realistically they don't have anything tying them to Hawkins. Hopper doesn't have Elle anymore. Joyce, her older son, is in New York already, and the other one is already graduating and already is going to a whole university in a different state. So there's nothing really tying them to Hawkins, and they just want to live together. And also, he proposes to her, and she agrees, and now they're starting a beautiful new chapter in their life where they're married to each other, they're in a new town, and they're gonna experience new things. And then it cuts back to Mike and the crew in the basement, and how Mike is trying to help them cope with the idea that this could be the last time, and how they're growing up and what's the future for them. And he's narrating like, oh, Dustin, the character of Dustin, he travels for his quest to like seek more knowledge, but he still finds time to see his friends, and is showing the scene of him studying in the library of his new university. But when he goes out, he's picked up by Steve, and Steve still drives all the way over there to hang out with him or bring him back home to Hawkins to hang out, and then drops him off back at the university. How Will the Wise will go and it'll be overwhelming at first, but he'll find his place and he'll find people that make him feel more comfortable and secure about himself. And is showing the scene of him in a gay bar, and he's just having friends. He's just chilling in a gay bar with, cause like it's a city, so there's more people who are more like him in the sense of, especially in those times, who are more comfortable. And unlike Hawkins, there's places where now, aka a gay bar, where they could all hang out comfortably, openly, and how that's a comforting thing for him, despite him being in a whole new town and a whole new like place, and it's a city, and he's far from anybody he knows, and he knows nobody there. But it has the contrast is, but you are in a place where there's a lot more acceptance of that, and there's people who are like you, and there's places to hang out with them. And then it goes to Lucas and Max and how they're in love. It doesn't necessarily say what's in the future for them. And then they go, what's for the narrator? AKA Mike, and he's explaining how he chooses to believe that Elle is alive, that Kali, in her last dying moments, used her powers to make Elle invisible so that she could go into the tunnels that Hopper would use to go into the Upside Down. And at the same time, she's casting the illusion of Elle standing at the gate so that they could think Elle died, Elle could live her life, and that Elle is in this remote place in the middle of nowhere, in some place in the world, where she found something similar to what Mike described to her. She found a place with a lot of green and mountains and beautiful landscape, and there's two waterfalls. He said three, but there's two waterfalls there, and there's this secluded, beautiful town that lives amongst this, and that she could finally live her days in peace and know what peace is, and that in order for her to stay safe and for them to stay safe, unfortunately, comes the price that she gets to live this, but she can never see them again, and they can never see her again. But that he's happy for her, and that's how he chooses to. That's what he believes in, and that's what he chooses. And everybody crying is like, you know what? I choose to believe that too. And then it cuts to them going up to go eat, and while the door is open and they're going up, Mike's little sister Holly with Derek and three friends, like her best friend, her second best friend, and then the black kid that she's like into, I forgot his name, and all of them are like in the basement, and Holly's introducing them to Dungeons and Dragons, and they're all playing, and it's kind of reminiscing of how like in real life it's just their turn. It's their turn to be kids. It's their turn to enjoy life that way, enjoy moments like that, just like how we all did. Like I had moments where that's what it was with my friends, where it was just like not everybody had an Xbox or something like that, and we would go to that one friend in the group who did have an Xbox, and we would all play. We would all eat a bunch of junk food and just hang out. There was nothing for us to do all day. We had no responsibilities, no bills, no nothing, and we would just hang out all day, make jokes, play. And Mike is kind of seeing how like it's Holly's turn with her little friend group. It's their turn to experience those good times of just being a kid and not having anything to worry about, and just having so much fun with your friends and just making memories with them. And how he's more happy, it seems he's more happy about it because unlike him and his friend group, it's all over. And Holly could get to really experience a normal childhood, unlike her brother Max and her brother Mike and their whole friend group. How from like the sixth grade all the way to literally when they're seniors and graduating, that whole time was just constant, nonstop threats to the world, to the city of to the little town of Hawkins, and how they were stripped of a normal childhood. and that, Holly doesn't get to experience that, and Holly will get a normal childhood. And these kids also, like, they experience something traumatic, but that's it. They they suffered one thing, and that's it. They won't be suffering consistently year by year by year, like Dustin, Lucas, Max, Mike, Will, Steve, like all these people. So I thought it was a beautiful scene, and he smiles and he goes up and he closes the door, and the frame is on the door fading away into black, but you could still hear the kids in the basement just having a good fucking time. And it was very good, and I did enjoy that, and it was very fucking beautiful. It was a very beautiful ending. Now, the theory that is still having people debating, and it's a very big topic online, is about Eleven's death. Now, like I said, Mike is telling Max and the OG crew that he believes that Kali used her powers to make it seem like Eleven was still standing in the Upside Down, but in reality she was invisible and going into the tunnel so she could escape, and that she's in a similar place in the world where Mike described, beautiful landscape and multiple waterfalls and stuff, where she could be in peace. Now, me personally, I am one of those people. I am on the side of Eleven is dead. I believe that this scene was implying that this is what Mike is deciding mentally how to deal with a very good friend for years and the love of his life dying in front of him. And, this is what I choose to believe, because it's supposedly up to interpretation, but I am in the crew of Eleven is dead, because, like I said earlier, when Eleven was in the mind of Mike and she was saying her goodbyes, she said, I believe you're the right person to help the others deal with this decision of mine. AKA, she knows Mike is not only a core member, like a leader, like a person for everybody, especially the OG crew and the young teenagers, but his storytelling and imagination will help them cope with the idea that Elle had to die in order for all this to truly be over. Because, you know, despite me not liking Kali and not wanting her around, especially because she was like, we gotta kill ourselves, but you cannot deny that she was wrong in saying, if we live, especially you, 11, if you live, we will be hunted for the rest of our lives. Even if this whole Henry, Mind Flayer, Upside Down, Dimension X is all over, we still have to deal with people wanting to capture us, study us, and duplicate us for the rest of our lives. And that is true. That is something that will definitely be happening. The government will not let go of this chick who's just freely roaming around with psychic powers, especially with the proof that they could use her to duplicate or replicate more and more as they want. They're not letting her go. So it seems like she was letting Mike know, I know you don't like this, I know you won't understand, and you probably never will, but I just need you to please help the others also be able to understand and deal with this. Deal with it, because like Hopper told him before that scene where he's telling the whole crew what he thinks. He tells him, you don't have to like it and you don't have to understand it. That's not the point of grieving. The point of grieving is to learn to deal with it. To deal with it in a way where it's not hurting you and your loved ones. In a way where you still get to live a good life and you're not affecting yourself and you're not affecting the people that you love around you. That's what he told him. And then the scene after, he's telling the OG crew and Max how he's going to deal with Eleven's death. And they all cry and go, you know what? I agree. That's a beautiful thing to have in mind instead of having in mind. Elle could have never possibly still lived a normal life, and we would have never been in peace, even though we defeated Vecna the Mind Flayer, because the government would have still been after her. So we would have never gotten our peace. And she had to die in order for all of us to have our peace. That's what I believe. That's what they choose to believe. Hey, you know what? Faked her death. Kali somehow lived long enough to use her powers to fake Elle's death. Elle made it out, and Elle is somehow in this other place in the world where it's close to what Mike described, and she gets to live happily ever after. And that, that's when Mike chose to mentally deal with the situation, and everybody's like, yeah, I'm gonna accept that too. But I thought the scene was strictly implying these are human beings who are teenagers who've been through a lot, and they're now going through another harmful thing. And Mike going, you know what? I don't. Hopper is right. I don't want to hurt myself. I want to live the life that Elle would want me to have, and I want to help the others also be able to deal with it like I am. So I'm gonna explain to them my way of dealing with it. And then they all go, that is a beautiful way to deal with it. That's a beautiful thing to have in mind in order to deal with it. I'm gonna choose to believe the same thing as you, Mike. And also, it just doesn't make sense how, like, on a realistic way, how she would have the knowledge and money to achieve this goal of traveling the world to find as accurately as possible a place that that Mike described to her. It's just, and then not be caught by the government while she's doing this, because, like, there's no place in the US that looked like that. Obviously, be like, well, they obviously had to use that, but it's implying that no, where she was at is somewhere like in Ireland, places like that. So she had to get enough money to book a flight or a boat ride to that place, which is already kind of crazy. Where's her passport? Where's her identity? But before that, she had to have the knowledge of somehow looking up places and being like, okay, that's the perfect spot. I need to find a way to get there. And throughout this whole journey, not get caught. Not get caught by the government, who's actively gonna be looking out for her. But nevertheless, it's supposed to be up to interpretation. I think they did a terrible job at that. But if it's up to interpretation and you believe, hey, there's evidence that shows that Mike is telling the truth, that Elle did live, Kali did help her out, and she's now happily ever after, not being able to make contact with them ever again in their life, but she is alive and living peacefully, then, you know, that's the beauty of interpretation. You get to live. You get to choose to believe that. But in my opinion, the Duffel brothers did a terrible job at leaving into interpretation, and I believe that the scene was more in terms of this is how Mike is choosing to deal with it mentally, and he's telling everybody else, and everybody else is going, that's a beautiful way of dealing with it. I'm gonna deal with it the same way. Now, last slide. I've yapped long enough. Last slide. In my opinion, my overall thoughts on the season and the ending specifically. My opinion is that I do have nitpicks with Stranger Things, more specifically the season finale, like the season 5. I do have nitpicks, a lot about them, and I will make a video about that. I will be making videos about how, like, everything wrong that Stranger Things 5 did, and that, in my opinion, they did wrong and could have done better, as well as a video of like why I think Stranger Things 5 is good and everything they did right. But that will be videos coming out in the future. But as of right now, I'm just letting you know I do have nitpicks. I do have things specifically with Stranger Things 5. But in my opinion, I still have it as a good season. As a good season. I think the season is still good. And in my opinion, a very cool thing about Stranger Things and the beauty about Stranger Things is that there isn't a bad season. I don't have. Yes, are some seasons better than others in my opinion? Yes. But I have it where none of these seasons are terrible seasons. Like, none of these seasons were bad to the point where, like, I'm not gonna watch, or it was a struggle to finish the season, or it's like the show was in jeopardy and danger of being canceled because of this terrible season. Like, no, to me, all these seasons are great. They're good. They're all rewatchable. They're all unique while still being the same story. everything, and it's beautiful, and I love this. This show is good. I love it, and it's gonna be one of the best shows to have ever been made. So, with that being said, I give the season an 8.6 out of 10. As of right now, I will be making a video in the future as well, like ranking the seasons. So I'm not gonna say where I have this in terms of ranking, but it is a good season. At the end of the day, like I said, it is a good season, and I don't believe I believe Stranger Things is one of those shows, those rare shows where it's like no season was bad, no season was terrible. All seasons were good. They all had their flaws. They all had their bad things, their good things, but they're all good seasons, and they all are rewatchable and enjoyable in their own rights. Now, that being said, thank you very much for clicking and watching this video. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to hear this motherfucker yap. And hopefully you guys had a good New Year's, and hopefully this year's for you guys as the same way that I'm hoping that in terms of the YouTube thing, this is this year's gonna be for me. And I hope everything is having a wonderful time. And that being said, yap long enough. If you're new or not subscribed, please press subscribe. Uh, if you like my videos, I have more videos. Check them out and stay tuned for the future. But that'll be